The lights in the real-time with Bill Maher studio gleamed like polished glass, bouncing off the sleek black table where debates had turned into wars, and laughter had often become a weapon. The audience filled every seat, murmuring with anticipation. When Bill Maher walked out to his signature theme, the clapping turned thunderous. He grinned that familiar half-grin, the one that said he knew something was about to happen. And he did. Tonight's guest was Megyn Kelly. She sat across from him already back straight, expression calm but alert, her presence commanding before she even said a word. Maher adjusted his jacket, leaned forward, and said into the camera, "All right, let's get into it. You know her as the former Fox News anchor, the host of The Megyn Kelly Show, and someone who's never afraid to stir the pot. Please welcome Megyn Kelly." Applause filled the studio. Megyn smiled. That practiced yet genuine warmth that masked the fire underneath. She greeted Maher with a firm handshake, the kind that said she wasn't here to be patronized. "Good to have you here," Maher said, his tone teasing but guarded. "I hear you've been saying things that get people, let's just say, talking." She laughed lightly. "That's one way to put it. I just say what I think. If that shocks people in 2025, I guess we're in more trouble than I thought." The audience chuckled. Bill smirked. He loved a guest with sharp edges, but he also loved sharpening them further. "Let's start right there," he said, gesturing with his hand. "You've been very vocal lately about what you call cancel culture and media censorship. I've said my piece about this too, but don't you think people exaggerate that problem? No one's stopping you from talking. You've got a massive platform." Megyn didn't blink. "No one's stopping me, Bill, but they've stopped a lot of people. And not because they've committed crimes or said something evil, because they dared to question whatever the cultural narrative of the moment is. You know that better than anyone." A ripple went through the crowd. Bill grinned, pretending not to take the jab. "Oh, you mean my little controversy back in the day? Yeah, I survived. And so will everyone else. People get mad. It's the internet. That's not censorship. That's consequences." "Consequences are what you face when you break a law," Megyn countered smoothly. "What we have now is mob rule. People lose their jobs, reputations, friends, over a word, over an opinion. That's not progress, Bill. That's fear, dressed up as virtue." The audience reacted, some clapping, others murmuring. Maher held up a hand. "But surely, you'd agree that sometimes the outrage is earned. Some people say awful things, and when they're called out, suddenly they're the victim? That's a little convenient." Megyn smiled thinly, leaning in. "Bill, accountability means you answer for what you said. Cancellation means people erase you, pretend you never existed. And it's not about awful people. It's about normal people who make one mistake and get dragged like they're monsters. That's not justice. That's entertainment for the miserable." The words hit hard. Even Maher looked momentarily taken aback by the precision of her tone. He leaned back, eyes glinting. "So what? We just let everyone say whatever they want? No boundaries, no pushback? That's chaos." Megyn tilted her head, her voice steady. "It's called freedom. Chaos is what happens when only one side gets to speak." Applause thundered through the studio, catching even Maher off guard. He chuckled, shaking his head. "You've got a room full of liberals clapping for free speech. That's a miracle." She smiled. "No miracle, Bill, just proof that common sense isn't dead yet." Maher grinned, but there was a flicker of irritation behind it now. "You know, Megyn, people accuse you of appealing to a certain demographic. Let's say the folks who think everything's too woke. Maybe you've built your brand around that?" Her smile didn't falter. "My brand is honesty. If people are tired of being told they're terrible for existing, then yeah, they listen. That doesn't make them wrong. It makes them human." Maher shrugged. "Fair enough, but you've got to admit, you've made a career out of calling people out for being offended, yet you're offended by people being offended. That's kind of ironic, don't you think?" The audience laughed, sensing blood in the water. But Megyn's tone never rose. Bill, I'm not offended by their feelings. I'm alarmed by their power. There's a difference. It's one thing to get angry. It's another to destroy someone to prove how righteous you are. The laughter faded into thoughtful silence. Bill tapped his cue cards. So you think this outrage culture is what? A symptom of weakness? Yes, she said without hesitation. It's insecurity. When you can't handle hearing something that challenges you, you try to erase it instead. That's not strength. That's cowardice. The words hung in the air, sharp and clear. Maher gave a slow smile, almost grudgingly impressed. You don't mince words, do you? I stopped mincing words when people started mincing truth, she replied coolly. The audience exploded in applause. Even Maher laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. Okay, that's a good line. You might have just written my next monologue. Megyn's grin widened slightly. You're welcome. He leaned forward again, more serious now. But you've got to see the other side, Megyn. There are real issues people are fighting for. Inclusion, fairness, equality. Sometimes pushback isn't censorship, it's just evolution. She nodded slowly. Evolution's fine, but forced evolution, that's dictatorship. You can't guilt people into enlightenment. You inspire them into it. It was like the air thickened with energy. The audience reacted again, clapping louder this time. Maher's smirk faltered as he realized he'd lost control of the room. All right, he said, raising his hands. Let's not get too deep before the commercial break, but Megyn, you've got to admit, it's not like conservatives haven't tried to cancel people too. The audience hadn't even settled when the show returned from the commercial break. The band's upbeat outro faded, but the tension in the real time with Bill Maher's studio hung thick, like humidity before a storm. Bill leaned forward at his desk, cards in hand, smiling a little too widely for comfort. He knew it. She knew it. Everyone knew it. The sparks from the first half had already set the internet ablaze, and the second half promised to be gasoline. Welcome back to real time, Maher said, forcing the easy cadence of his opening. We're here with Megyn Kelly, whose podcast has been making waves and apparently breaking a few hearts on Twitter. The audience laughed. Megyn smiled, cool and collected. I can't help it if the truth hurts, Bill. Some people bruise easier than others. Maher chuckled, but the smile didn't quite reach his eyes. You've got a way with words, I'll give you that. But let's get into this. You've said recently that the media has become, and I quote, a propaganda machine for ideology. That's a strong accusation. You really think journalists are pushing agendas instead of truth? Megyn's smile faded slightly, her tone growing firm. Not all journalists, Bill. But let's not kid ourselves. A lot of what's called news today is opinion wrapped in outrage. They pick a side, decide who's good and who's evil, and everything gets filtered through that lens. It's not journalism anymore. It's theater. The crowd murmured. Maher leaned back, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. Okay, but couldn't someone say the same thing about you? You're not exactly neutral. You've got your own lens, your own take. She nodded. Sure, I do. But here's the difference. I admit it. I don't pretend to be the voice of universal truth while demonizing everyone who disagrees. I let people decide for themselves. That's the job. To inform, not indoctrinate. The applause came quickly, sharp and loud. Maher let it go on for a few seconds before gesturing for quiet. But let's be real, Megyn. The stuff you say on your show, it rubs people the wrong way. You've taken shots at the media, at Hollywood, at movements that a lot of people support. Maybe you're just out of touch with where the country's at now? Megyn tilted her head slightly, that poised half-smile forming again. No, Bill. I'm in touch with where the country really is, not where Twitter thinks it is. People out there are tired. They're tired of being told they're bad for questioning things. They're tired of being shamed into silence. I talk to them every day, and they're not extremists. They're just ordinary people trying to breathe in a world that's allergic to common sense. The audience clapped again, louder this time. Maher shifted, tapping his cards against the desk. Okay, but you've got to admit, social progress sometimes makes people uncomfortable. That's kind of the point, right? Change never feels cozy. True, Megyn said. But real progress doesn't require humiliation. You don't lift one group up by crushing another. And that's what's happening now. People call it justice. But it's really just revenge and designer for activism. Laughter rippled through the crowd, but Maher's eyes held hers, a glint of challenge. You sound like someone who's angry about where the culture's gone. I'm not angry, she replied smoothly. I'm disappointed. We traded authenticity for performance. Everyone's acting, online, on TV, even in politics. No one's trying to fix anything, they're just trying to look good doing it. Maher nodded slowly, his tone softening just a little. You know, I can't say you're wrong, but don't you think there's also value in people finally speaking up? For decades, certain groups didn't have a voice. Isn't some of this just the pendulum swinging the other way?